The summer heat pressed down on the cracked pavement outside Miller County Social Services like a weight that wouldn't lift. 17-year-old Alex Rodriguez clutched a worn manila folder containing what little documentation existed for him and his 6 younger siblings. Inside that folder were birth certificates with no father listed, a mother's death certificate dated 3 months prior, and a hastily scrawled note from their last foster placement that simply read, "Unmanageable group, cannot continue care." Alex's weathered sneakers scraped against the concrete as he shifted his weight, trying to keep his siblings calm in the oppressive heat. Maria, 15, held baby Sophia against her hip while the toddler whimpered from the temperature. The twins, Carlos and Diego, both 13, sat on the curb picking at loose threads on their donated clothes. 9-year-old Elena pressed herself against Alex's side, her dark eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from too many broken promises. 8-year-old Miguel kicked at pebbles, his jaw set in defiance that barely masked his terror. They'd been waiting outside the building for 2 hours. Their caseworker, Janet Morrison, had promised to meet them at 10 that morning to discuss their situation. Alex knew what that meant. At 17, he was aging out of the system, and there wasn't a foster family in 3 counties willing to take 6 children ranging from 18 months to 15 years old. The math was simple and brutal. They were about to be split up. When Morrison finally emerged from the building, her professional smile couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd been working in child services for 12 years, and Alex could see she'd delivered this kind of news before. Her clipboard held multiple forms, each one representing a different placement for his siblings. "I'm sorry for the delay," she said, glancing nervously at the group. "I've been making calls all morning. I have some options for everyone." The word everyone hit Alex like a physical blow. Not for you all or for the family, everyone. Separate placements. Morrison crouched down to Alina's level, her voice taking on the artificially gentle tone adults used when delivering devastating news to children. "Elena, there's a lovely family in Riverside County who's been wanting a little girl just your age. They have a big house with a pool and a dog named Buddy." Elena's grip on Alex's shirt tightened. "I want to stay with Alex." Morrison's smile faltered slightly. "Sweetie, Alex is almost grown up. He's going to be starting his own life soon. Wouldn't you like to have a mom and dad who can take care of you properly?" The implication stung. Alex had been taking care of his siblings since their mother, Carmen, had started her final spiral into addiction 2 years ago. He'd learned to forge her signature on school forms, stretch food stamps to last the month, and keep everyone quiet when the landlord came knocking. When Carmen died of an overdose in their cramped apartment bathroom, Alex had found her and managed to keep the family together for 3 months before a neighbor finally called social services. Morrison continued down the line, delivering each placement like she was handing out party favors. The twins would go to a group home in Sacramento. Miguel had a potential placement with an older couple in Fresno. Maria and baby Sofia might be placed together with a family in San Jose, though the family was still considering whether they could handle a teenager and an infant. "What about me?" Alex asked, though he already knew the answer. Morrison's expression shifted to something resembling genuine sympathy. "Alex, you'll be 18 in 4 months. The state has programs to help you transition to independence. There's a group home that can take you until then, and after that, you'll qualify for educational assistance and—" No, the word came out harder than Alex intended. "We stay together." Morrison sighed, the sound of someone who'd had this conversation too many times. "Alex, I understand this is difficult, but the reality is that no one can take 7 children. And honestly, you've been carrying a burden that no teenager should have to carry. This gives everyone a chance at a real family." "We are a real family." Maria's voice cut through the tension, and Alex felt a surge of gratitude for his sister's fierce loyalty. Morrison gathered her papers with practiced efficiency. "The placements will begin next week. I know this seems overwhelming, but I truly believe this is what's best for everyone." As Morrison walked back toward the building, Alex felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. He looked at his siblings, really looked at them. Alina's school shoes were held together with duct tape. The twins shared a single backpack between them because that's all they had. Maria tried to act tough, but Alex could see the fear in her eyes every time Sofia cried. Miguel had started wetting the bed again after their mother died, though he'd die before admitting it. Maybe Morrison was right. Maybe they would be better off with real families who could provide stability, education, opportunities he could never give them. But as Sofia reached her tiny hand toward him and Miguel unconsciously moved closer to his side, Alex knew he couldn't let them be scattered across California like seeds in the wind. That evening, they sat in their temporary placement, a group home that could only keep them for 1 more week. The facility was clean but impersonal, filled with the kind of furniture that could withstand years of temporary residence. Alex lay on his narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles and trying to figure out impossible math. How could a 17-year-old with no high school diploma, no job, and no permanent address keep 6 children together? His phone, a prepaid model with a cracked screen, buzzed with a text from Morrison. "Placements confirmed for Monday. Be ready at 8 a.m. Alex deleted the message and made a decision that would change everything. He wouldn't be there Monday morning. The next morning, while the group home staff was dealing with a crisis involving 2 other residents, Alex quietly woke his siblings. They moved with the efficiency of children who'd learned to pack their lives into plastic bags and disappear. Elena helped Sophia while Maria gathered their few shared belongings. The twins and Miguel knew without being told to be silent. They walked out of the group home just as the sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Alex had $43 in his pocket, stolen from the group home's petty cash drawer, a crime that made his stomach churn but seemed necessary for survival. They caught a Greyhound bus heading north, Alex telling the driver that their uncle was picking them up at the next stop. For 3 days, they moved from bus station to bus station, sleeping in 24-hour laundromats and eating whatever Alex could afford from vending machines. Elena developed a persistent cough from sleeping on cold floors. Sophia's diapers ran out, and Maria had to fashion temporary ones from stolen towels and duct tape. The twins grew quieter each day, their usual energy sapped by hunger and uncertainty. It was Miguel who spotted the "Help Wanted" sign at Thompson's Ranch Supply, a weathered piece of cardboard propped against a fence post on the outskirts of a small town called Cedar Valley. The sign looked like it had been there for months, edges curled from sun and rain. Miguel tugged at his brother's sleeve. "Look." The ranch supply store sat at the end of a dusty road, surrounded by empty fields that stretched toward distant mountains. It was the kind of place that time seemed to have forgotten. A single-story building with peeling paint and a porch that sagged under the weight of hay bales and farm equipment. But it was also isolated enough that maybe, just maybe, they could hide there for a while. Alex approached the store with his siblings trailing behind him like ducklings. The screen door creaked as he pushed it open, setting off a small bell that announced their arrival. The interior smelled of leather and motor oil, with narrow aisles packed with everything from horse tack to chicken feed. Behind the counter stood a man who looked like he'd stepped out of an old Western movie, probably in his 60s, with silver hair and hands that spoke of decades of hard work. His flannel shirt was clean but well-worn, and when he looked up from his paperwork, his eyes held the kind of quiet assessment that comes from years of reading people and situations. "Help you folks." His voice carried a slight Texas drawl, though they were nowhere near Texas. Alex straightened his shoulders, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "I saw your help wanted sign. I'm looking for work." The man's gaze moved slowly across the group, taking in their mismatched clothes, Sophia's makeshift diaper, Elena's persistent cough. When his eyes returned to Alex, there was no judgment, just curiosity. "Name's William Thompson. Most folks call me Bill. You got experience with ranch work?" Alex's mind raced. He'd never worked on a ranch, barely knew the difference between a horse and a pony. But he thought about Monday morning, about Morrison's clipboard full of separation orders, about Elena's tear-stained face and Miguel's brave front crumbling a little more each day. He lied smoothly. "I'm a hard worker and I learn fast. I can do whatever needs doing." Bill Thompson studied him for a long moment, then glanced at the children again. "These your brothers and sisters?" "Yes, sir." "Where are your parents?" Alex had prepared for this question, rehearsed the lie during their 3 days of running. "Our mom died. Dad's not in the picture. We're staying with relatives nearby." It wasn't entirely untrue, just missing some crucial details about social services and foster placements. Bill nodded slowly as if making some internal calculation. "Ranch works hard, starts before dawn, ends after dark. It's hot, dirty, and sometimes dangerous. You sure you're up for it?" "Yes, sir, absolutely." "What about school?" Alex's prepared response died in his throat. In all his planning, he hadn't considered education. Alina and Miguel needed to be in school. Maria was supposed to graduate next year. Even he had hoped to get his GED eventually. "A summer break," he said finally. "We'll figure out school in the fall." Bill Thompson walked around the counter and approached the group. He crouched down to Alina's level, much as Morrison had done, but his manner was entirely different. Where Morrison had been professionally gentle, Bill was naturally kind. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Elena." Her voice was barely a whisper. "That's a pretty name. You feeling okay? That cough sounds pretty rough." Elena nodded, but Bill's experienced eye caught what Alex had been trying to ignore: the slight fever flush in her cheeks, the way she favored one side when she breathed. Bill stood up and looked at Alex with an expression that seemed to see right through his carefully constructed story. "Tell you what, why don't you all come out to the ranch with me? I'll show you around, explain what the job entails. If you're still interested after that, we can talk terms." Alex felt a flutter of hope mixed with terror. This felt like their last chance, and he was walking into it with nothing but lies and desperation. "That would be great, thank you." Bill gathered some keys from behind the counter and led them outside to a pickup truck that had seen better decades. The bed was filled with feed sacks and farming equipment, but Bill quickly rearranged things to make room for the children. "Hop in," he said, gesturing to the truck bed. "Alex, you can ride up front with me." As they drove down a winding dirt road, Bill kept up a steady stream of conversation about the area, the ranch, the work involved. Alex tried to pay attention, but his mind was spinning with worry. What if Bill discovered they were runaways? What if he called the police? What if Elena's cough got worse? The Thompson Ranch appeared gradually through a grove of oak trees. A modest house with a wraparound porch, several outbuildings, and corrals that housed a handful of horses. It wasn't the sprawling operation Alex had imagined, but it was clearly well-maintained and loved. "Not much to look at," Bill said, noticing Alex's assessment. "But it's home. My wife Elena and I built it up from nothing over 30 years. She passed 2 years ago, and I've been struggling to keep up with everything on my own." There was something in his voice when he mentioned his wife, a loneliness that Alex recognized from his own experience of loss. They spent the next hour touring the property. Bill explained the daily routines: feeding the horses, maintaining the equipment, managing the small herd of cattle that grazed in distant pastures. The work was indeed hard, but Alex found himself genuinely interested despite his exhaustion. The children explored the property with the first real enthusiasm they'd shown in days. Elena's cough seemed to ease in the clean air, and Sophia giggled as Maria showed her the chickens pecking in their coop. The twins discovered a rope swing hanging from an ancient oak tree, and for a few minutes they looked like normal kids again. As the afternoon sun began to sink toward the horizon, Bill led them back to the house. The interior was simple but comfortable, with the kind of lived-in warmth that comes from decades of shared meals and quiet evenings. Photographs on the mantel showed Bill and a woman with kind eyes, Elena, Alex assumed, at various stages of their life together. "You folks hungry?" Bill asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "I was just about to start dinner." Alex's stomach clenched with hunger, but pride made him hesitate. They'd already accepted so much, and he didn't want to seem like they were taking advantage. "We don't want to impose." "Nonsense." Bill was already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "I always make too much anyway. Elena, honey, why don't you sit down? You look tuckered out." As Bill prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables, Alex watched his siblings settle into the comfortable kitchen. Miguel found a book about horses and was flipping through it with genuine interest. Maria had Sophia on her lap, feeding her small bites of food with the patience of someone much older than 15. The twins were examining Bill's collection of horseshoe trophies, asking detailed questions about each one. For the first time in months, they looked like a family again instead of a group of refugees. After dinner, as the younger children dozed in the living room, Bill poured himself a cup of coffee and gestured for Alex to join him on the porch. The evening air was warm and filled with the sounds of crickets and distant cattle. "So," Bill said after a long, comfortable silence, "you want to tell me what's really going on?" Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd been dreading this moment, but he'd also known it was coming. Bill Thompson wasn't the kind of man who could be fooled by a 17-year-old's lies, no matter how well rehearsed. "I don't know what you mean." Bill smiled, not unkindly. "Son, I've been reading people for more years than you've been alive. Those kids in there have been sleeping rough for days. That little one has been eating nothing but junk food for who knows how long. And you've got the look of someone carrying the weight of the world." Alex stared out at the darkening fields, trying to decide how much truth he could afford to share. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "We're not criminals," he said finally. "We haven't hurt anyone or stolen anything important. We need to stay together." Running from family. Running from the system. The words came out in a rush, along with tears Alex hadn't even realized were building. "Our mom died 3 months ago. Social services wants to split us up, send us to different families across the state. I know I'm just a kid, and I know I can't give them everything they deserve, but I can't let them be scattered like that. We're all we have." Bill sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "What about your father?" "Never knew him. Mom had me when she was 15, and it was just us until Maria came along. Then the twins, then Elena and Miguel. Sophia's dad stuck around for about 6 months before he disappeared." "And you've been taking care of everyone." Alex nodded, afraid to trust his voice. "That's a hell of a burden for someone your age." "It's not a burden." The words came out sharper than Alex intended. "They're my family. You don't abandon family." Bill was quiet for a long time, and Alex began to prepare himself for disappointment. This had been too good to last. Bill would call social services in the morning, and by Monday, they'd be right back where they started. "My Alina and I never had children," Bill said eventually. "Tried for years, but it just wasn't in the cards. We talked about adoption, but we were always too busy with the ranch, always planning to do it next year or the year after that. Before we knew it, we were too old, and the agencies weren't interested in placing children with folks our age." He paused, staring out at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "She always said this place was too quiet, too empty. Said it was meant for the sound of children laughing and running around. I never knew what she meant until today, watching your brothers and sisters explore the property. For the first time in 2 years, this place felt alive again." Alex didn't dare to hope, but something in Bill's tone made his heart race. "I can't officially adopt 7 children," Bill continued. "I'm 64 years old and the state would never approve it. But I can offer you all a place to stay while you figure things out. You work for me, help me keep this place running, and in return, you've got a roof over your heads and food on the table. We'll worry about making it official later." "You do that," Alex's voice cracked. "You barely know us." Bill smiled, and in that smile, Alex saw the same loneliness he'd been carrying, the same desperate need for family that had driven him to steal his siblings away from their placements. "Son, I've been alone in this house for 2 years, eating dinner by myself and talking to the horses because there's no one else to talk to. You'd be doing me as much of a favor as I'd be doing you." Alex wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. "What about school? And legal stuff? Social services is going to be looking for us. We'll cross those bridges when we come to them. Cedar Valley's a small town and folks here mind their own business. As for school, there's a good system here and we'll make sure everyone gets enrolled when the time comes. The legal stuff, well, that's more complicated. But I've got a lawyer friend who might be able to help us navigate things. Alex looked through the screen door at his siblings, who were curled up together on Bill's couch like a pile of puppies. Elena's cough had quieted. Sophia was sleeping peacefully in Maria's arms. And for the first time in months, none of them looked afraid. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you help us?" Bill finished his coffee and stood up, stretching muscles that had been shaped by decades of physical labor. "Because sometimes life gives you a second chance when you least expect it. And because Elena always said that family isn't about blood, it's about choosing to love people and stick by them no matter what." He paused at the screen door, looking back at Alex with an expression of quiet determination. "Besides, I've got a feeling you kids are going to bring this old place back to life. And Lord knows, it's been too quiet around here for too long." Dawn came early at Thompson Ranch, announced by a rooster that Bill had inherited from the previous owner and never had the heart to get rid of. Alex woke on the living room couch, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings and the sound of birds instead of traffic. For a brief, wonderful moment, he'd forgotten about social services and foster placements and the weight of keeping his family together. Then reality crashed back, along with a surge of gratitude so intense it made his chest tight. They were safe. For now, they were safe. Bill was already in the kitchen when Alex stumbled in, hair sticking up and still wearing yesterday's clothes. The older man was moving efficiently between the stove and counter, preparing what looked like enough breakfast to feed a small army. "Morning," Bill said without turning around. "Coffee's fresh if you drink it." Alex had never been much of a coffee drinker, but something about the normalcy of the offer made him pour a cup. It was strong enough to wake the dead and bitter as medicine, but it felt like acceptance. "You didn't have to make breakfast for everyone." "Didn't make it for everyone," Bill replied with a slight smile. "Made it for family. There's a difference." The word family hit Alex like a physical thing. He'd been the head of his family for 2 years, making decisions and carrying responsibility that should have belonged to adults. But he'd never had anyone claim him as family from the outside, never had someone choose to include him in something bigger than survival. The kitchen began to fill with sleepy children drawn by the smell of bacon and eggs. Elena appeared first, her dark hair a cloud around her small face. Her cough was better, but Alex could see she was still running a low fever. "Morning, sweetheart," Bill said, immediately noticing her flushed cheeks. "How are you feeling?" "Okay," Elena whispered. though she leaned heavily against Alex's side. Bill crouched down to her level, pressing the back of his hand against her forehead with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent years caring for sick animals. "You're running a fever, honey. We should probably have Doc Martinez take a look at you." Alex's stomach dropped. A doctor meant records, questions, possible involvement from authorities they were trying to avoid. "She's fine, just tired from traveling." Bill's eyes met Alex's over Alina's head, and there was understanding there. "Doc Martinez is a friend of mine. Been treating folks in Cedar Valley for 30 years. He's discreet, especially when it comes to families who might be having a hard time with insurance or paperwork." The implication was clear. Bill understood their situation was complicated, and Doc Martinez could be trusted not to ask too many questions. After breakfast, Bill loaded Alina into his truck for the trip to town while Alex stayed behind with the others. The remaining children explored the property with the boundless energy of kids who'd been cooped up for too long. Miguel discovered a barn cat with new kittens and spent an hour in heaven, carefully petting the tiny creatures while their mother watched suspiciously. The twins found an old tire swing and took turns pushing each other higher and higher, their laughter echoing across the empty fields. Maria helped Alex inventory their meager possessions, which didn't take long. Between all 7 of them they had 4 changes of clothes, 3 pairs of shoes that actually fit, Alina's inhaler, Sophia's favorite stuffed elephant, and Alex's phone with about 6 hours of battery life left. "We need to call Morrison," Maria said quietly, "so the younger kids wouldn't hear. She's probably going crazy wondering where we are." Alex had been dreading this conversation, but Maria was right. Their disappearance would have triggered missing persons reports, possibly Amber Alerts. Morrison might be heartless when it came to keeping families together, but she'd be genuinely worried about their safety. "What do I say? Sorry we ran away, but we found a nice old man who's letting us stay with him. She'll have the police here in an hour. So we don't tell her where we are. We just let her know we're safe." Alex pulled out his phone and stared at the cracked screen. Morrison's number was in his contacts, along with the group home and 2 different emergency services lines. His thumb hovered over her name for a long moment before he finally pressed call. Morrison answered on the first ring. "Alex, Alex, is that you? Where are you? Are the children okay?" Her voice was tight with stress and what sounded like genuine concern. Despite everything, Alex felt a stab of guilt for putting her through this. "We're fine," he said quickly. "Everyone's safe and healthy. Well, Alina has a little cold, but nothing serious." "Alex, you need to come back immediately. Do you understand what you've done? There are police looking for you across 3 counties. I've got social workers checking bus stations and shelters. Your siblings are scared and—" My siblings are fine, Alex interrupted. They're not scared anymore because they know they're not going to be separated. There was a long pause. When Morrison spoke again, her voice had shifted into the professional tone Alex knew meant she was trying to regain control of the situation. Alex, I understand you're frightened about the placements, but running away isn't the solution. You're making this harder for everyone, especially your brothers and sisters. They need stability, education, medical care. They have all of that. What do you mean? Alex closed his eyes, knowing he was about to make their situation infinitely more complicated. We found somewhere to stay, somewhere safe, someone who wants all of us. Alex, that's impossible. No one takes 7 children, especially not strangers. Whatever situation you've gotten yourself into, it's not sustainable and it's probably not legal. You need to. Alex hung up and immediately turned off the phone. His hands were shaking, and he felt sick to his stomach. He just made everything worse, but he couldn't listen to Morrison explain again why his family had to be broken apart for their own good. Maria took the phone from his hands and pulled the battery out. She'll try to trace the call. She already knows we're somewhere within range of the tower. We just connected to. Won't take them long to narrow it down. They stared at each other, both realizing that their sanctuary at Thompson Ranch might be shorter-lived than they'd hoped. Bill returned with Elena around noon, along with a bag from the local pharmacy and a much more relaxed expression on his face. Elena was wearing a new pair of shoes, proper sneakers, instead of the duct-taped disasters she'd been walking in, and her color looked better. Doc says it's just a respiratory infection, Bill reported. Probably from sleeping in damp places and not eating right. Gave her some antibiotics and a better inhaler. Should clear up in a few days. Alex noticed Bill didn't mention the cost of the doctor visit or the medications, but the gesture wasn't lost on him. This man had known them for less than 24 hours and was already investing in their well-being. "We need to talk," Alex said quietly. "I called our caseworker. She knows we're alive, but she's got police looking for us. It's only a matter of time before they track us down." Bill nodded as if he'd been expecting this. "Figured as much. Can't say I'm surprised 7 kids don't just disappear without causing a stir. What did you tell her?" "That we're safe and staying with someone who wants all of us. She didn't believe me." "Smart woman. It does sound pretty unlikely." Bill smiled grimly. "Guess we better figure out how to make it less unlikely." That afternoon, Bill made a series of phone calls from his home office while Alex tried to keep the children occupied and calm. Elena was napping off her fever. Sophia was content playing with a set of measuring cups Bill had found in a kitchen drawer, and the older kids were helping with small ranch chores that made them feel useful rather than like burdens. When Bill emerged from his office, his expression was thoughtful rather than worried, which Alex took as a good sign. Called my lawyer friend, Jack Peterson. He's been handling legal issues for folks around here for 20 years, and he's dealt with family situations before. He's coming by tomorrow morning to talk about options. What kind of options? Well, the way Jack explains it, the state's primary concern is that you kids are safe, cared for, and getting proper education and medical attention. If we can prove all of that's happening, they're usually willing to work with us rather than force a situation that's clearly not in anyone's best interest. Alex felt a flutter of hope, so they might let us stay. Might. Jack says the first step is getting temporary guardianship established legally. Since you're almost 18, Alex, you could potentially apply to be guardian for your siblings, but you'd need a stable living situation and income to make that work. And you'd provide that. Bill looked out the window at Miguel, who was patiently teaching Sophia how to pet the barn cat without scaring it. I'd be honored to provide that, but we need to do this right, through proper channels. No more running, no more hiding. We face this head-on and make them understand that splitting you up would cause more harm than keeping you together. That evening, Bill called a family meeting in his living room. All 7 children gathered on the couch and floor, with Bill in his well-worn recliner and Alex perched nervously on the edge of the coffee table. "Kids," Bill began, "I want to make sure everyone understands what's happening and what might happen next. Alex told your caseworker that you're staying with someone who wants to keep you all together. Tomorrow, a lawyer is coming to talk to us about how to make that legal and official." Elena's hand crept into Alex's. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. But there are people whose job it is to make sure children are safe and taken care of, and they're worried about you because you left the place they had arranged for you." Miguel looked up from the horse book he'd been reading. "Are they going to make us leave?" Bill's expression was gentle but honest. "I don't know, son. I hope not. But I want you all to know that whatever happens, we're going to fight to keep this family together. Sometimes adults make decisions they think are best for children without really understanding what those children need." Maria, who had been quiet through most of the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "What if they say Alex can't take care of us because he's too young? What if they say you can't take care of us because you're too old?" It was a fair question, and Alex appreciated that Bill didn't try to sugarcoat his answer. "Then we'll figure out another way. There are options we haven't explored yet. The important thing is that we're going to face this together as a family. No more running, no more hiding. We're going to make them understand that love and commitment matter more than age or paperwork." Carlos, who had been unusually quiet since their arrival, finally looked up from his examination of Bill's horseshoe trophies. "What if we don't want to go back? What if we want to stay here?" "Then we'll make sure your voices are heard," Bill said firmly. "You kids have a right to say where you want to live and who you want to live with. That doesn't always mean you get what you want, but it means people have to listen." After the younger children had been settled for the night, Alex found himself back on the porch with Bill, both of them staring out at the star-filled sky and trying to process the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Are you sure about this?" Alex asked. "You've known us for one day. We could be more trouble than we're worth. Hell, we already are more trouble than we're worth." Bill was quiet for so long that Alex began to think he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of deep consideration. "Alex, when Alina got sick, I spent 2 years watching her fade away bit by bit. Toward the end, when she was barely conscious most of the time, she'd have these moments of clarity where she'd grab my hand and tell me not to let the ranch die with her. She'd say this place was meant to be filled with life and laughter and the sound of children growing up." He paused, taking a sip of coffee that had long since gone cold. "I thought she was just talking, you know. The ramblings of someone whose time was running out. But yesterday, when I watched Alina laugh at those kittens and saw Miguel's face light up over that horse book, I understood what she meant. This place has been dead for 2 years, and you kids brought it back to life in a single afternoon." Alex felt tears building behind his eyes. "But the legal stuff, the complications." "I'm 64 years old, son. I've got maybe 20 good years left if I'm lucky. I can spend those years alone in this house, keeping the ranch running just well enough to pass it on to some distant cousin who'll probably sell it to developers. Or I can spend them watching 7 amazing kids grow up and maybe helping them build something better than what they started with." Bill stood up and placed a weathered hand on Alex's shoulder. "Besides, Alina always said the best families aren't the ones you're born into, they're the ones you choose and fight for. Tomorrow, we start fighting for this one." Jack Peterson arrived at Thompson Ranch precisely at 9 o'clock the next morning, driving a pristine pickup truck that looked like it had never seen a day of actual ranch work. He was younger than Alex had expected, probably in his 40s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of navigating complex legal situations. Bill met him on the porch while Alex corralled the children in the kitchen, trying to keep them occupied with breakfast and quiet activities. Through the window, Alex could see the two men engaged in serious conversation, Peterson taking notes in a leather portfolio, while Bill gestured toward the house and outbuildings. After about 20 minutes, they came inside, and Peterson's demeanor immediately shifted when he saw the children. His professional mask softened into something more genuine, as he took in the scene Maria braiding Alina's hair while Sophia played with measuring cups, the twins helping Miguel sound out words in his hoarse book. "This must be the Rodriguez family," Peterson said, his voice warm but carefully neutral. "I'm Jack Peterson. I'm a lawyer, and I'm here to help figure out how to keep you all together." Alex stood up, automatically moving into his protective big brother stance. "Are we in trouble?" "Not the kind of trouble you're thinking of," Peterson replied. "But your caseworker called the sheriff's office yesterday evening. They're planning to come out here this afternoon to check on your welfare and probably to take you back to social services." Alex's stomach dropped. "So we need to run again." "No," Peterson's voice was firm. "Running would make this infinitely worse. Right now, your 7 children who left an unsafe or unwanted placement to stay with a responsible adult who's providing for your needs. If you run again, you become fugitives, and that changes everything." Bill gestured toward the living room. "Kids, why don't you go outside and explore for a bit? The adults need to talk through some boring legal stuff." As the children filed out, Alina clinging to Alex's hand, until he promised to join them soon, Peterson spread several documents across Bill's coffee table. "Okay, here's where we stand legally," he began. "Alex, you're 17, which means you're still technically under state custody along with your siblings. By leaving your assigned placement, you've violated the terms of your foster care arrangement. Normally, that would result in all of you being placed in secure facilities while new placements are arranged.